All right, everybody. Hello, and welcome to another episode of React Wednesdays. So my name is TJ Van Tol. I work as a developer advocate at Progress. And with me, as always, the one and only Dan Wilson.
Hey, I'm Dan Wilson. I work at Digital Primates, where we do enterprise React consulting. We also curate the Enterprise React newsletter. So if that's your kind of thing, Google it. We never sell your email.
And our special guest for today, Jamie Birch. Welcome. Uh-oh, did we lose?
Oh, thanks very much for having me.
I think you froze up there for a second, but I heard you. So Jamie, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, that sort of thing.
So I work for Strategy and Technology Limited. It's a company based in London, and we do sort of TV related services. So I specifically make web apps for smart TVs. But all my mobile development related stuff is just hobbyist stuff. And so what I'm making here is React NativeScript, and my general hobbies with regards to development tend to talk about cross-platform stuff. So I really like cross-platform in general.
Awesome. Well, I know we want to talk about React NativeScript today, and I know Dan and I have a little bit of background here too, so we're kind of excited about this. But for people that
I dressed up for the occasion with my fancy.
Yeah, I got to go to where we're going.
I got my hat here.
I've got stress balls there in the corner too. I should bust those out in a minute.
Of course, NativeScript would never make you stressed.
Yeah,
never. Not a bit. And
exactly.
It's fair to say that when I was involved, for example, this NativeScript React project was just coming about. I'm really interested to see what the progress is, because I spend a lot of time in the React world now, and it's an interesting ecosystem for sure. And so I want to see where this project is and what it offers. And what people really want to know is, when should they choose this project versus React Native?
Sure, I'll hope to get into that in a bit.
Why don't we start with just like, for people that have never heard of any of this, why don't you just explain for everybody? We also have Alex Iskin in the chat. Hey, Alex.
Hey, Alex.
I think Alex has heard of NativeScript before, though. So I don't think you need to explain it to him. But for people that haven't heard of this technology before, maybe you could just lay out like the 101 high level what all of this is.
So this is a bit of an odd crowd, because each one of you here live and breathe NativeScript. So anything I show here, it will be like second news to you. But for anyone who doesn't, NativeScript is it's another cross-platform library which gives you native bindings, so that when you're writing in JavaScript or indeed TypeScript, you can access native functionality, which for now is for the iOS and Android platforms. Maybe in future it'll be more, but that's the idea. The idea that you can stay in the JavaScript context and just call APIs synchronously, don't need to set up bindings. It's just transparent control over the native context. And not only giving you those bindings, it also gives you a abstracted UI framework, so that you have all these UI components with things like a frame and page and layout bases and all sorts of things that mean you don't have to know a thing about Android or iOS. You can just think about what you want to make in a mobile app, and the same code base can deploy to Android or iOS.
Yeah, and I think for our audience here, especially considering this is a React crowd too, usually like if people ask me what NativeScript was and I knew someone was familiar with React Native, I'd at least start by telling them like it's more or less the same thing, right? If you were making a Venn diagram of technology decisions, like we could spend hours talking about the differences between React Native and NativeScript, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But at a very high level, they're solving the same basic problem, I'd say. Absolutely, more or less.
Yeah, there's a few architectural differences. I could get into what sort of makes React NativeScript different from React Native, if you like.
Yeah, spend the 30 seconds on that. I have my own explanation, but yours is going to be much more refined.
Yeah, because I'd actually be curious your story behind it too, because I think most React developers that think like, oh, well, I need a native app would think like React Native in a heartbeat, right? So I find it I've always found it very interesting and awesome that you chose to build something completely different as a different option.
Yeah, there's a strong gravitational pull to React Native, firstly. And secondly, it's a really good framework. And so I'm interested to see also what your origin story is here. Bring it.
Yeah, so I mean, I started out as a native developer, then became a React Native developer, and I saw it has lots of great things going for it, but there are still some frictions, such as if you actually want to get at a native API, it generally involves setting up a native module, spinning up Xcode, creating an Xcode project, writing an Objective-C, which you might not even know, accessing those native APIs, and then exposing them to the JavaScript context. And still after that, it's still, there are other issues, which I'll get into in a moment. But what makes NativeScript different is you don't actually have to make these native modules. You can stay in the JavaScript context, you stay inside, the moment you need an API, you just call it where you are in the code editor. You don't have to set up this extra project and pull in these plugins. There's also differences in threading. So for React Native, when you want to access a native API, unfortunately, you can't block the JS thread while doing that. Well, that's the general story. So you have to bend yourself out of shape to access these native APIs asynchronously. So maybe you want to measure something natively and then do something based on that in your React code, but you can't do this stuff synchronously like you would in React DOM because it's just got a different architecture. React NativeScript tries to make React Native, well, tries to achieve what React Native does, but in a more React DOM-like fashion.
I think, if I was to walk back how I got involved in NativeScript, and this is 2015, so it's, things were written on clay tablets back then, but basically I had a consulting company and we were looking for mobile technology. And so I did the usual shootout between, React Native and NativeScript and some hybrid stuff. And what really blew me away was how much code I didn't have to write with NativeScript because of that direct connection thing, and just how much React Native wanted me to be a native developer, of which I was not. And frankly, I want to build mobile apps with my web skills. I don't want to learn Objective-C. It's got a lot of crazy syntax and really long names for things, and it was intimidating. And frankly, I build web apps. I want to build web apps, but I want them to work natively on mobile. And that was basically the allure for me to really get excited about NativeScript, is it allowed you to directly access all the native platform APIs from your own JavaScript code without any intermediaries. And I think that benefit doesn't get sort of grasped by people who maybe are used to the React Native way, where they just expect, I'm in a mobile context, I'm going to write some mobile code. But if you kind of walk through this, if you're doing cross-platform, you need to build an Android app and an iOS app at minimum. And if you have to write native code, that means there's 2 additional languages. You have to be somewhat competent in copy pasting stuff from Stack Overflow. That's kind of a big ask. It's much easier to stay with what you know and build your apps with that.
Well, I agree with all of that. We want to use a web developer mindset to create native apps for mobile.
Well, I have some other, I have lots of questions, but I know you want to show some of this. So this might be a decent time if you want to walk us through, because it's been a while since I've looked at it. So I'm very curious what the project looks like now, and maybe you could show people what it's like to build an app with React NativeScript.
Sure. Do you want me to start demoing now?
Yeah, why don't you go for it? And we'll see if we can get this to show up right. We had some fun with this beforehand, playing with tech, but I think we can get this to work.
Oh, I happen to have this up on my screen. So this is the origin story of NativeScript. You may remember this conversation back in 2018, where I asked in an Ask NativeScript session, any likelihood.
I do remember these.
Any likelihood of React integration on the horizon, and who should respond to me but TJ Vansel himself? No immediate plans.
Look at number 3 too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So that's sort of where I thought, well,
that would be the origin story.
Oh, that's great.
Let's see where we are then.
And thanks to the magic of open source, you decided that the answer to that was, well, why not me?
Absolutely.
Okay. And I'll say too, Jamie's getting his windows in order here, that if you have any questions here watching it about NativeScript, about React NativeScript, let me know. I'll be monitoring the chat here as Jamie goes through and demos this, so I can pose any questions you have to him as we go.
Okay, so I'm about to create a fresh new React NativeScript app. This is using the NativeScript command line, which now you can access. So to get NativeScript command line, you would do, let's just stop.
And we're going to need the font size up,
Oh, yeah,
like
fair enough.
several orders of magnitude.
Bang, 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 bang.
That looks pretty good.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, why not make it bigger? So if you don't have NativeScript installed yet, you need the NativeScript command line, I mean to say. So you would do that, but I've done it already. And once you have the NativeScript command line, what we'd write out is NativeScript. So that's the new way that we can access the NativeScript command line. Create. We specify what template we want to create. In this case, it's React, and we ask for demo 2 because I've already used demo 1 earlier when I did a run script. So let's go flying.
So how much is this incorporated into NativeScript as like an official integration at this point? It kind of looks like it is, just because that's like -- React straight from the official CLI.
There's not that much of React NativeScript at all that's intrinsic to NativeScript core. The template, yes, that's part of the NativeScript controlled repo. But beyond that, there's almost no mentions of React NativeScript in the NativeScript code base. And so what's actually exciting about that is that you can create your own renderer for any flavor of web technology that you like. Oh, there's nothing here. What's going on? Oh, code dot. You can create your renderer for anything such as, maybe you're using Crank.js and you want to make a custom Crank.js renderer for NativeScript. You can totally do that. It's an imperative vanilla JavaScript framework that you can wrap around with any renderer you like. Okay, so we've made ourselves a new React NativeScript project, but this is just a scaffold. We haven't yet created what we need for specifically an iOS app or specifically an Android app. So we're going to do that next step here. NativeScript command line, run iOS, and that's all it takes. I've already got the simulator I want open, so it'll auto-select that. I don't have my phone plugged in. Oh, actually, there's one thing we should do. So I'm going to turn off HMR, and I have a very good reason for this. We're actually running on Apple Silicon, and there's a few things in NativeScript command line which are not quite working out in Apple Silicon, but I thought it was maybe more interesting to get Apple Silicon involved than to have everything totally working. And also because my Intel Mac melts when I try streaming. So
I was like off topic, but have you enjoyed using it? Like, does it, because I have trouble actually. One of the reasons we use StreamYard for this is because my Intel Mac hates OBS, right? Like it fights it hardcore.
It just works.
Glorious. It's been glorious, and I'm using it because it doesn't, it can cope.
Yeah.
When I tried streaming on my Intel Mac, I had to put an ice block under it. Quite honestly, an ice block. Before it
sounds like me playing Warzone.
It is kind of. I mean, I remember this from my time on NativeScript too. It's funny how, because of the nature of the tech, you're getting a little more low level, right? Because you would, like a normal JavaScript framework, you wouldn't expect like anything to break when you start running it on a different chipset. But because NativeScript is like really getting into the nitty gritty, it's kind of funny how things like that can affect it more.
Yeah, I was honestly surprised how little it took to get running. So this is not. So there's a bit of smoke and mirrors here. Some of this is running through Rosetta emulation of x86, that's the one. So the simulator, so Xcode and the simulator, they are M1, but the NativeScript framework and NPM and Homebrew, all those things, and Node, all those things are running through Rosetta emulation. So it's a bit of a Frankenstein's monster going on. And I think that's partially the reason we've been having some NativeScript command line issues. It's some things like the console logs not coming through because it's not quite. Once it's all totally M1 native, I think things will be a bit smoother. But we work with what we got for now. So here we have a beautiful iOS app in the simulator right here. You will see it's native because I ask for an alert. I get a very familiar UI alert. We've got a navigation bar. We go to the next screen. Totally native. All looks very convincing because it is real. Native gestures. And yeah, even some font icons, which says nothing about native, but it's nice to have.
So one question that comes up is why does native matter? Like what would be different about the app you have now versus one that maybe on Cordova or Capacitor or one of the other hybrid technologies?
So what matters about native is it gets it right for the platform. Things like virtual lists have as good performance as possible if they're run natively. And anytime the platform introduces a new thing such as accessibility or dark mode, you know that the native component is going to get it right. And especially for things like modal alerts, you need to be sure that there is no way for the user to tap outside of this area and get around the alert, like things like connecting a keyboard and pressing tab or asking Siri to go to the next view or something. This modal needs to work, otherwise users will be able to go places they're not supposed to go to.
Hang on, I'm just writing down those 2 ways to get around the modal. All right, got it.
You'll cause lots of woe to other developers. So I've come in on source/app.ts just so you can visually see that. There's a lot of boilerplate in here. Well, I say a lot. There's only a few lines. This is the entry point of your app, and that's the only reason I'm showing it. And what you get to define here is the root view for your app. And this is simply a React component. So if we follow this through to component/navigator, we'll see what I am passing through. Now, if you ever tussled with React Native, you'll actually find what's described here quite familiar. This is React Navigation, version 5, actually. So I have implemented it for React NativeScript. So you can use your favorite navigation framework as long as it's React Navigation, and it's very easy to set up navigation. So I'll show you how easy it is to switch from a stack navigator to a tab navigator, for example. Just copy that line, say tab view instead of stack, place all of those, and then, not that, place just these ones. And then correct the options, because a tab navigator doesn't have a header. Just save that. Once it live reloads, you got a tab navigator instead.
That's pretty fancy, and I can imagine a React developer would rather stick with what they're already comfortable with versus learn something different.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you still get the ability. I mean, to me, like this is the thing that makes this approach so compelling is you still maintain that ability to customize the native bits as well. So you're not just saying, I have a tab and I throw everything out. Like you get to use familiar APIs, but you're still tweaking them because everybody needs to change colors and that sort of thing.
Absolutely. And one of the reasons I made React NativeScript is because I found NativeScript itself really hard to use directly. It used kind of XAML-based UIs. It was imperative. I didn't know how do you add a child node and that kind of thing. By coercing it into React, I can just hit the ground running and use my existing React skills. So now that this navigation is all declarative, we can do fun things such as set default rules for all our navigation screens. So here we have the initial root name, home, which means it will select this screen that's named home and references the home screen component. There's another screen here, the secondary screen. We could change the initial root name, or for example, we could change the background color of the header, which we can do right now. Save, we'll live reload and see how that looks. Beautiful.
Ship it.
I'll put it back to normal.
So, obviously we've talked about sort of the periphery of this, but say a React developer comes in and they don't have a lot of mobile skills yet, like how comfortable are they going to feel in this project? Like what's going to be familiar and what's going to be different?
I think this should actually have less bewildering things than React Native has, which I'll be able to show once we move to the home screen component, which we might as well do now, actually. So jump over to there, just to show you where that is in the folder hierarchy. It's source components, home screen. This, so as you can see, it's not using HTML components like div and paragraph and anchor. It has layout bases rather than divs to contain things. It has a rather odd thing called label rather than just setting some text inside a div. So yes, the component names are different, except in the case of like button, where, you know, of course you're going to call it button. But there are some different approaches, such as this style. You can pass in a string if you really want to, but I've actually never tried it. It's just not the way I'd program. I've taken more of a React Native approach to this. You pass in an object to styles, and then you get nice autocomplete, and you'll go down there. This is API compatible with the stylesheet.create API that is used in React Native. So we declare styles as objects, and we use JavaScript styling. You don't, and you know, if you don't like using stylesheet.create, you can literally just write it in inline, like background color is red or whatever. But yeah, so there's certainly a few differences, but I think it doesn't take long to get acquainted, especially because we have Flexbox layout, where, as you'll see, it's all the same CSS, flex direction, justify content, and these things do get laid out as Flexbox would. So let's just swap that over to row. And they're laid out as a row.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because it's like, I think the biggest like thing that takes a long time to get used to, and this is true in React Native and in NativeScript, but at the end of the day, it's not a browser there, which like seems like an easy concept, but it's your mind, like if you're coming from a web background, wants to do like webby things, and it takes you some time to realize like, oh, I can't actually, this is using iOS layout mechanisms or Android layout mechanisms. So having that ability to do things like Flexbox is actually incredibly powerful, especially if you've ever dove into like the raw iOS and Android ways of doing it, which are not nearly as fun or as clean or as familiar, I guess.
Absolutely. Like, what's the right way to append a child to something that's owned by a constraint layout system? Like,
yeah, how do you center text in a UI label? And like, it gets messy.
So there's a few other similarities with React DOM that would make it easier for people coming from a web background to get to adjust. So one thing is this a bit too detailed? Well, we'll see. Let's just import some handy things from React. We'll get use effects and use ref. And I'm going to show you how refs work. Actually, am I? Is this a good example?
Do it.
The thing about this is, as I mentioned, NativeScript command line is a bit flaky, but.
Well, we usually expect the demo gods to fling a little poo during someone's demo.
All right. Well, we'll see how it goes. So let's make a ref, and whoops, grab a ref to Flexbox layouts. And what do I want to do? Let's do a use effect. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you what it looks like when you do grab a reference to a component in React NativeScript, and show you how much power you have over the UI. And hopefully nothing goes wrong, but a few things were going wrong in the pre-demo. So first let's add some typings to this reference. I happen to know it will be an NSV element, which is a thing, which wraps around Flexbox layout. I can explain all this in just a moment. So NativeScript core components are the component that you would instantiate if you were doing this through vanilla JavaScript. And I've actually reused NativeScript views DOM, and so when we get a reference to this rendered flexbox layout React component, what you're actually getting a reference to is a NativeScript view element that wraps around the underlying NativeScript flexbox layout. And then once you have reference to that, you can do some fun things with the native views. So let's just see what it... actually, I think the thing I realized during the pre-demo is you can't actually do anything native until you wait for the onloaded event, which you two will be very familiar with.
Yep. It's like good old-fashioned DOM content loaded, but in a native land.
Well, actually, well, use effect when setting no dependencies would get you the DOM style kind of once it's mounted, the ref's populated. But NativeScript has an additional population step where it fills in the native aspect of the DOM. So first it instantiates a flexbox layout, and then it instantiates the UI view that backs the flexbox layout, which is what I want to demonstrate here. So args. Let's just grab a reference. This is a reference in another form. That's the thing. So let's say flexbox layout is that, and you'll see that the typing for that is observable, but I happen to know it narrows down to flexbox layout. And a flexbox layout component has an iOS view, which is our native view. And if you look into the docs, you'll find that that's represented by a UI view, I'm pretty sure. But, and here we get our first bit of red line. The moment we want to access native controls, we need to fill in some typings to help us out. So let's do that right now. We make a references.d.ts file, and I'm just going to copy something from the show notes. Add a / reference to the typings, and here's where NativeScript really starts shining. So you see UI views typings have now been filled in. If I just try to jump over there, you can see that we have access to every API that UIKit exports. And that's pretty exciting, isn't it? Except if you two both know NativeScript already, so this is like not really a big reveal.
No, but I still, the long iOS API names never get old. It's kind of fun. But it is, like, to me, like, the power of this is still so crazy, because to get at Dan's question, like, will this seem familiar to React developers? Like, even though we're going to start to do some native things here, this is the same use ref, from React on the web. It's the same use effect, the syntax for components, for attributes, for props. All of this is totally familiar. So you get to sort of wade into some of this stuff that's native, but you're doing so while you're using a lot of things that you're just used to, you're familiar with.
And they're very simple to use.
Yep.
So what would the equivalent be in React Native if you were going to do something like this?
Yes, I should have prefaced that. The equivalent is you don't. It's not possible to get a reference to the underlying native instance in React Native, because they don't expose it. They don't want you to break out of the sandbox. And in fact, you can't even you can't do anything very useful at all with a reference. This reference that I gave up with earlier, even to the element that abstracts the underlying native component, they don't expose many APIs at all. So you can't measure it synchronously, for example. You can't find out. Some of these you can. I think you can possibly find out what the parent is, but you can't find out what the children are, or vice versa. Whereas in React NativeScript, you can. So let's just get that ref. Can we ask about the children? So yeah, we can find out what the child nodes are, and find out what the parent node is. We can append children. So we can we can really hack around with and say, you know what, I feel a bit limited. Just let me take care of things here. But let's get back to this native view, which again, you can't get access to in React Native because the idea is to stay inside the sandbox. What can we do with this native view? Absolutely everything. Here's every Objective-C API that's made public on the native view. You'll always see these accessibility ones at the top. Background color looks fun. What does it take? It takes a UI color. Let's set it to red color. And let's just save that and see how it goes.
Crossing fingers.
Seeing Yay! Hey. So you proved Alex was saying a bold move from live coding, but you got this.
It's going well. If you spend your whole day preparing for it, it goes a little less badly. So that's what you can do on Loaded. The reason I brought in use effect was to show another party trick. Wouldn't it be nice if, for example, so let's put that color back to normal. Wouldn't it be nice if we could swap this app from light mode to dark mode without having to pull in an extra plugin? I probably should have led with that. Yeah, it would probably be a bit more of a compelling example. The first thing we have to do is set up for that a bit because we've got some explicit colors and that's going to override the dark modiness and light modiness. So I'm turning off the background color there in our navigator. We'll do a save. It's going to reload. You'll see I turned off the red color. I think we're going to have to quit and reload because it's holding on to some native state.
Yeah, I think it stores that, doesn't it? That you said it once.
What? Null? Will that do? How about we just set it back to white? White color. Oh.
Alex says save file.
Oh, it accepts white.
Nice.
Or maybe it just it accepts null or undefined. Let's find out. Okay, it probably work because of that. All right, well, that shall forever remain a mystery. And what we will do, whoa, that was the wrong one. What I'm hoping to do is show how we can get a reference to the UI application, the singleton, grab the key window, and turn us into dark mode. So, I happen to know we ask for the override user interface style method. We see that it takes a UI user interface style attribute. And I just ask for dark mode. And in one line of code, if this hasn't gone wrong,
I believe in you.
Drum roll.
Hey. We're in dark mode.
Well, and I think the thing too is like you said, like you happen to know, but it's also one Google search away as well. Because Absolutely. if you did want to say, how do I turn on dark mode for iOS, you'd find probably a Stack Overflow link that has this code, and then you just go into your NativeScript app, you use the TypeScript autocomplete. And I know from practice, it's a little bit harder for the more advanced things. Like you definitely like having some iOS and Android background helps a lot when you get into more advanced situations. But you can get the basics done really easily, and it's possible to get the advanced stuff done. Whereas with React Native, you're digging into like you're writing code in Xcode and Android Studio and working with their bridge and stuff to accomplish the same thing.
It's a nightmare. Yeah. When you stay on the rails with React Native, you know, life is good, but the moment you want to go off the rails, you could lose your whole day over it. And I think that's really what React NativeScript brings to the table. Should we go back to talking heads while I think about the next thing to demo?
Yeah, absolutely. We can go back to talking heads. Does anybody in the chat have any questions? Let me go to this.
Oh, good. I seem a lot less intimidating if my entire face isn't in the screen. So I think this is, it's pretty interesting to me to see how far this has come. And there's definitely some React constructs I see that I don't recall from back in the day. Like, talk to me about tooling, because obviously if someone's interested in picking up the framework, they're going to be used to a certain number of tools or capabilities that are familiar. What does NativeScript offer?
So before getting into what NativeScript offers, you know, all the React tooling, that all still works. Redux works, React DevTools works. If for non-Apple Silicon, React Fast Refresh is how I do the HMR. And as for NativeScript tooling, if you want to debug stuff, you can use the Chrome debugger. You can use, well, tooling. I don't really use, I'm not a professional NativeScript developer, so I don't find myself using tooling too often. Yeah, I'm not sure what I can add to that.
But it sounds like much of the things I'd be familiar with in React land are completely applicable here. Even React land on the web, it's totally useful in this project.
Yeah, absolutely. You can, anything that is host agnostic for React, that is to say, it doesn't have any strong dependency on React DOM or on React Native, is just a sort of state manager, will work perfectly with React NativeScript.
Was React DevTools in your list?
Yep.
How does that work?
There's a question. I haven't used it in a while. It sets up you set up a WebSocket connection and in the NativeScript app, and React DevTools runs in a separate process. The WebSockets from the client talk to the server in this equation, and they just pass information about how things are updating between the two, and it works the same as it does for a regular React DOM app.
Fancy.
Alex wants to know about React animation support.
So that's an interesting one. If I don't really do much animation, but anything that's possible in, for example, React DOM is totally possible in React NativeScript, and we could actually do that. If I'm feeling lucky, we could do that right now.
Let's roll the dice, Jamie.
Let's see. So I'm thinking we might make a marquee. You know, one of those.
Oh, you got to bring that back.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Since you brought that up, that's now 100% happening.
Okay, so this is not only live demoing, this is live thinking how we do this. So before we go into the screen, let me think how we do this.
We've got other friends here in chat as well.
Hey, OC.
We're now trying to force Jamie to live code some animation stuff. So if you could continuing to pester him in chat, that would only help. We'll make him do it.
Okay, so what I'm thinking is we use request animation frame to ask for a frame at a time. You know, there are platform optimized ways to do this using the animation tools, but we can do this with timers. So
yeah, make a bad one. As long as it does anything, I'll be impressed.
Okay, let's give it a go then. All right, so if we switch to code mode.
Yep.
There we go. So this is good if I wrote this use effect in earlier. Let's bring us back into the light. Unspecified would do, because that's technically what we started off with. And that'll clean up the state, so we can. So let's see. We would request an animation frame. Animation frame. So this is something that was implemented by Eduardo. We used to only have set timeout, but thanks to him, we have this. We'll request an animation frame, and what we're going to do, we're going to update some state. So first we need to do a use state, and I thought I put that in. Oh no, I guess I didn't.
Actually, where did request animation frame come from? Because you didn't import. Did you import that, or
that's globally available?
Okay.
So we're gonna start with some state that starts at 0. Yeah, it is one way we could do it. I'm not. Yeah, okay. Maybe this will be a back and forth animation, because otherwise we need to get into recursion. All right.
Yeah, it can be the world's simplest animation. I wouldn't over-engineer this at the moment. I think we just want to show the rough workflow of it.
Yeah, and there used to be a great tag called Blink.
Yeah.
How about we do an on and off animation? I think that won't make my mind melt so much.
Any animation is good.
Okay. So on and off, toggle on, and then is on. We'll request an animation frame, toggle on goes to true, and then if we wrap this in a function, and I like to call it a retry. Do a retry. Toggle on equals. Ooh, how do you reference? How do you do this with React hooks? I know that can't be right. Can we pass a callback in to find out what the current?
Yeah, you can. You can pass it a function, and I think it gets past the current state, and then you return the new thing that you want it to be. I think so. If I'm wrong, somebody in chat tell me. But there's definitely a function version of that toggle.
Even for hooks?
For hooks, yeah. It definitely exists.
Brilliant. Okay, that's very helpful. So it really shouldn't be called toggle on, it should be toggle, shouldn't it? So we're gonna retry. And based on whether it's on, hang on. And who's going to call retry? You're going to call retry. Based on whether it's on, we'll have some extra label saying is on. And that's going to flip between true and false.
Yeah, just to make sure it's working first.
And, you know, we could clean up after this. If we keep a reference for animation frame, we could clear the animation frame, but I dare say it will be fine. Okay, let's see what this does.
Yeah, if we go
into is nothing at all. Okay.
But it didn't crash, so that's like you gotta be optimistic here.
Yeah, you're ahead of me. I have to say.
Do we have to stringify this or something? No, surely
I don't
not.
think so.
Surely
I
something
think
else is going on. Is on.
I mean, it's worth trying, but
toggle. Maybe that's not working out. Hold on.
Can you log?
How about... this is a
and now we get to walk into how to debug NativeScript.
No, well, debugging animations would never be much fun. maybe the pressure of presenting might get to me. Maybe we should have bought this one before I embarrass myself too much.
How would you put something in the console when that function runs?
Good idea.
Yeah, because I'm curious if my my bit, I'm looking it up too because I can't remember the function version of this to make sure what I told you is correctly.
Surely. That's what I'm eyeing up. What is React's set state action?
And then where would that logging show up?
That would show up in your command line, right here with Webpack build, if only you were not on Apple Silicon. So if you are in Apple Silicon, you can read what's going on in the process. That's called demo 2.
Yeah, it looks
like Apple console.
The syntax you're passing to the setter there looks like it's correct. I think that's the right syntax.
That is very strange.
So then it sounds like this effect isn't running.
It will run once upon mount, and then it will retry indefinitely. But maybe we're breaking rules of hooks. By who knows what's going on here?
You could like old-fashioned alert to see if you got any value in there.
You know what? Let's see some animation today. So let's just do set interval, right? Keep this. This could be way simpler.
Yeah.
All right. On an interval of once every 40 milliseconds, we'll catch that interval. It feels like bad luck to call that in. And we'll return a cleanup function.
What could go wrong, right?
Clear interval. Right. And what we're going to do is we are going to, forget the toggling, terrible idea. It's going to start off as naught, and we'll have keyframe, set keyframe, won't we? And then that becomes a keyframe. Set keyframe to, now, I'd love to do this as a callback function.
You could do it. It should work.
We really reckon this is going to work. I've never done this with hooks. That's the thing. Val +1. Okay. So, on an interval, it's going to set that keyframe. Keyframe is going to increment, and we just need to log out the keyframe. What could, how could it get any simpler? Is
right.
keyframe. So I feel, I feel a bit sad that we're using set interval rather than
I don't.
frame.
If it works, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's one thing to
Hey, we got a 0.
So keyframe not. Okay, hold up.
So it might be my bad syntax. I would have swore that.
Never do this, kids. Never ever store state outside of setters. But I want to
Just
get
stick it all in the window or the document. It'll be fine.
Let's see. Oh, in fact, you can just grab keyframe and 2+1. Like, never actually do this. Put this through code review, lads. But save it up. See what we get. What is going on, right? Maybe I'm.
We need somebody in chat to save us here. Who's watching here and is like missing something obvious that we're doing here? Set it to like 12 or something, just to make sure it's updating the just some random number, right? Let's just make sure it's actually updating and getting in there.
Okay, so every 40 milliseconds, it's going to set the keyframe
to just 12. As long as we see the number 12, we know
what's going on.
Okay, hold on. No. We're getting this, right? Because now we know it's not making it down in there for whatever reason.
Oh, you know what? Let's get rid of that potential landmine.
Every programmer in the world just had that same kind of moment.
What's going on then?
Oh, come on. We've got some React experts here in the chat. Like someone has to see something we're missing here. So
we're all happy they're not in the hot seat trying to do this from memory.
The funny thing is, this is no slight on the library. This is just me being bad at React. Let's see. Let's plug it in. What could possibly be going wrong?
I don't know. This is blowing my mind a little bit because it should set interval looks right.
It should at least get to 12. So something's gone wrong. Does NativeScript not have set interval?
Well, I mean, you would get are you getting like a JavaScript error?
Let's see if the console has anything to say about
NativeScript should have set interval. Like
live reload. Console, what do you have to say?
Yes, chat is suggesting removing the clear interval just to see, removing the clear interval just to see if that's.
We'll see how that goes.
Survey says 0, keyframe 0.
That is so strange. But we're not getting any relevant messages.
It's all those evil jQuery hackers in your demo messing you up.
Console. Why are we not getting any messages from the console? Huh. Well, maybe this is not going to work out as a demo. But that looks hunky dory.
Yeah, we're missing something very obvious. Alex is saying like simulator debug menu view system log. I thought that's where you were though.
I probably just got there the wrong way. Does NativeScript implement set interval? It must do.
Well, you could set it to like set timeout.
Give that a go.
Just to see, because then in theory, in 40 milliseconds, the value would change.
Looking for 14, still 0. This is when I would blow away TNS modules and reinstall them.
Curious.
You probably progressed much farther than that as a debug step.
I would also be wondering, is the Webpack update coming through?
Oh, like, is it not? Yeah.
But, well, Alex, that's one hell of a landmine you passed me. The animation. But animation was actually one of the first things I implemented 2 years ago in React NativeScript. So it should, in theory, work.
So, hold on.
I did this pre-hooks. So
Alex has a good idea. You should totally do an alert on the first thing of the set timeout, just to see if we go into the timeout at all.
Cool. dialogues.alerts I live. Because if this never gets called.
Right.
Okay. Thank you, Alex.
So we have to be successfully updating the set there.
Clear interval. So I want to see what happens after we've set it.
So like the component isn't, yeah, there we go. We'll get this.
Whoa! Too many of these.
Have fun closing all those.
I can't actually even close one of them.
But is it saying 0? I can't actually.
It's 0. It's still stuck on 0. What on earth? Are we? Well.
And this is Code It Live, folks.
But it clearly doesn't crash on that line because it makes it to the next line. So it clearly runs this. It sets that to 14. Use effects. And it's...
Yeah, I mean, it's
almost like keyframe. The keyframe you're updating with set keyframe is not the one in scope in this Flexbox.
Yeah, it's like a stale or something.
Is keyframe like some sort of special word?
It is blue.
I mean, I can't imagine that's what the problem is, though, right? Like,
I think that's... Well, I'm tempted to blame Apple Silicon and wash my hands of this. But we've got... I can assure you that at some point along the way of making React NativeScript, yes, I did at some point handle state updates. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a very compelling library.
AKD is saying stale state. I don't think I totally understand. He said
state is stale. It's 0 when the constant gets added, and then it never gets updated and shown back to the browser. So AKD cubed is totally correct. We just don't know what type of things to smash on the keyboard to make it not do that. That's all right.
Pass keyframe as value to the set.
Oh, of course.
Interval.
Of course. Hang on. Isn't it dependent possibly on...
Well, no, because it should...
One of his.
They say argument to the set interval. So I think on line 19, like you pass... On line 19, you pass in keyframe, like as a parameter.
Yeah. I'm gonna just see if this depends on keyframe. Yes. Closer. All right, let's stop. You calm down.
I feel like oddly compelled to get this working at this point. This is like one of those like developer mindsets of like have to figure out exactly what's going on.
Well, we've got crowdsourced debugging solved.
Yeah.
It's now happening.
No, it's still stuck on keyframe 0, but it worked a moment ago.
But we were getting I don't know.
What's val in this case?
So this is something I've never tried before. The callback of the set state, well, the use state setter, where saying whatever the current state is, do that, but one more than that, so that you don't hold on to a stale value.
Alex is saying alert works because it has a new view.
So that means the old view is not updating correctly?
Does each render give us a new setter method? Nope. Well, I am rusty with React. Well, if anyone solves that, I'll be very interested.
I'll post the working code on our blog when somebody sends it to me.
Some homework for the viewers.
Be a good way of learning the basics of React NativeScript.
Or, well, any React at all.
Yeah, this is just a general React problem at this point. Well,
yeah, it's amazing. We sit here and look at a truly native way to write mobile apps for iOS and Android with React, and we get stuck on an animation state issue that's most of us would have trouble building on our own if the proverbial live code gun was pointed at the back of our head.
I thought it was going so well until I was asked to do something.
That's all right. It was I found it still useful because I think one of the things at least I like about doing this is seeing people like their workflow, how they go about solving problems, how they use the technology. So I think doing that sort of thing is actually kind of interesting to me, right? To see your debugging workflows and to see like how like it really does feel like, I mean, if at the end of the day, one of the harder parts of developing an iOS app is like dealing with React state exactly like, because I get frustrated on the web debugging that exact same sort of thing. That's actually kind of cool in a sense too.
One thing I'd point out is that yes, we had some failures along the way, but look how quickly we failed.
Yeah,
that's right. Really quick. Jamie, I mean, I'm sure sitting in your seat, you're kind of nervous about the fact that you couldn't knock out a marquee tag on the fly with no practice and no warning it was going to happen. But this is the way people write software. You try something, it doesn't work. You look something up, you try something else. Like we got to see how you would work through a problem like this. And I think if someone watches the broadcast and they're interested in using this project, what you just went through is not a Googleable thing to learn. You have to learn that through trial and error. And then you've just given an example of how you would approach the problem. What did you use? Where did you find the consoles? What things were at play? I learned that alert is a new view, and that kind of gets past the staleness thing. So, there are wins here, regardless of whether we successfully marqueed something.
Thanks, absolutely. And I'll make sure to build marquee into the core library so we never have to do that again.
We'll hold you to that.
Yeah, I'm curious too. We also have AKD and Nathan's joining us as well. So hey, Nathan, talking about whether set timeout or set interval, since it's using the native time libraries, is overridden in React to use the pure DOM again.
I think I know what he's getting at. I haven't overwritten. I haven't provided my own timing function that clobbers the global one. So yes, it is part of. Is it part of DOM or is it part of just ECMAScript? I don't know. Probably ECMAScript. But no, I haven't overwritten that in React NativeScript. So still a mystery.
Well, for people that are interested in this and want to get started, what's the best, like, what's your recommended place to go, thing to do, that sort of thing?
Oh, yeah. Well, definitely go for a walk in the woods. And, some of the best thinking you do away from the computer. But if you look at the React NativeScript docs, which I will obtain a link for.
Yeah, and then if you throw it in the link in the private chat in here, then I can pass that along to Twitch chat so everybody else can see it as well.
And the React NativeScript project itself, there's a GitHub page. You may or may not want to look at that. But yeah, the docs should be a good start.
Perfect. And is anything else that we haven't covered yet that you think people should know? Or also toss this out to chat if you have any other questions for Jamie about React NativeScript at this point. This is, so I guess, last call on questions that people might have.
So I feel a bit guilty about having promised to speak a little bit about Expo. That was my deliberate question mark in the tweet about things I might cover. Expo, so if anyone's familiar with Expo, it is the plugins ecosystem used by React Native. I just want to touch on it now. It is possible for NativeScript apps to consume Expo plugins. In theory, it's not quite done yet. I've made a proof of concept for iOS, and so at some point we could be sharing ecosystems, and I think that's going to be exciting.
That's pretty compelling.
It's a pretty good question here too from AKD. React Native suffered in the wake of the Airbnb article. Has it regained its reputation amongst the cross-platform sphere? Be curious your take on this.
React Native is doing very well since then. Microsoft is on board, which has really revived it. Facebook's always been on board. So it's always going to live well because it needs to work for the Facebook app and various other Facebook projects. But now that Microsoft and Amazon and, well, there's big business, there's teams like CoolStack and all sorts who are weighing in on it. No, React Native isn't going anywhere. It works well for what it's specialized in.
Well, cool. Well, thanks, Jamie. This has been a lot of fun. I enjoyed this catching up. We'll have to do this again sometime.
Thanks, TJ and Dan. Love to catch a drink with you at some point in the future once pandemic's all over.
Once we're allowed to travel to you, we'll see what we can do. Well, one thing we like to end with any last like calls or links. Jamie, I know you gave some. Dan, you want to drop any links or plugs that you have?
Yeah, let's talk about the newsletter again. So every 2 weeks, we curate the best articles about enterprise React. And our development team is the folks that submit the articles. And so it's developer approved. We don't sell your email and we don't spam. So if that's your kind of thing, Google it, sign up. We'd love to have you.
And I'll plug for React Wednesdays, and I'll get a link in here that next week we're going to have on, let me drop a link in here, Eve Porcello to talk about GraphQL. So if you're trying to learn GraphQL or curious about it, I know it's new for me, show up next week, Wednesday at 1 US Eastern time. And the week after that, we have Tyler McGinnis joining us. So that should be a lot of fun too. I know I'm a fan of his training materials and stuff, so we should have some fun with that as well. I guess last thing, Jamie, if people want to follow up on you, because I did see there were some other questions come in. If people have any other questions or want to ask you anything, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Oh, of course. Oh, I just realized there's a comments tab. I was on private chat the whole time. So one way to get hold of me is via Twitter, which I shall link. Here we go. So that's going into private chat. And the other way, if you want to get sort of instant messaging back and forth, it's quite easy to find me at the NativeScript Slack in the React channel. Or Discord, if you use Discord, there is a NativeScript Discord. I'll just bring that up. I guess you would need an invite to one or the other or both. So I don't know how invites work.
Yeah, for the Slack, it used to be you could invite yourself. I don't know if that's still a thing.
Yeah, I'm putting all these in the chat, and if people do have issues, just reach out to any of us on Twitter and such, and we can definitely help point you in the right direction. I'll drop the Discord in here as well. Well, thanks again, Jamie. This was awesome.
Thank you. Great fun.
We'll have to shame Nathan into getting you some of this swag. I know Dan has some laying around too, so that you can be on brand as well.
Yeah, I found that I actually literally have probably 100 pairs of NativeScript socks. So if your toes are cold, don't worry, it's coming. You'll be able to warm them in style with NativeScript. In fact, let me quickly grab a pair before we cut.
I could do with some winter wear. I need a scarf. I need gloves. Stress balls. I wouldn't say no.
Yeah, so like the next time the keyframes won't update, I mean, you could just sit here and just take it out on these, right?
Yes.
I've got some of these laying around.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Isn't it in fashion? Like, you want this. You want these socks.
I kind of figured it would have like individual toe holes, like, native, get close to the metal.
It's the one thing about NativeScript that's good is it's like fantastic branding. It's unmatched.
And these are cross-platform socks. They work for left feet and right feet.
Foot agnostic, are they?
On that cheery note, thanks again. See everybody. Remember, next week.
Cheers.
Bye.
Yes.